presentation on that date. However, the certified budget from the mayor being transmitted to the council is not occurring on that date. And because we won't yet have a certified public budget, we are not able to do a forum about the budget until the following week, which means that the week of the 6th, we will have a forum. We will have a forum on April the 6th. The mayor's budget is supposed to be transmitted to the council on April 5th. We will then have a forum on April the 6th at noon so that we can walk through the budget. We wanted to make sure that we gave people as much time as we could for people to digest the information and prepare testimony. Community members can then testify on April the 8th. So I did want to make sure that we shared that. We will then come back for another hearing on April the 23rd. And that's when they'll hear from government witnesses. Not sure why it was split into two that way. I don't think we need even a full day, much less 2 full days, but that's the way the schedule is structured at this time. That was all I had. Now, the presentation I was looking at, though, Charlisa, was not one of the 2 things on the agenda in front of me.
No, that's why I was saying we can maybe skip that part and jump right into today's presentations.
Okay. So first up, we have a representative from the Department of Human Services, Byron McKee, who is going to talk to us about some changes that are occurring with the SNAP, used to be called Food Stamp Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and TANF, the Temporary Assistance to Needy Families Program. So I'll turn it over so that Byron can share his screen.
Good morning. And can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Byron Mackey. I am the Program Manager of Training for DC Department of Human Services. And as mentioned, we'll talk about some changes to SNAP and TANF work requirements that we are implementing at the Department of Human Services. So here's an overview of the new work requirements. And so 3 of our major programs are SNAP, which is formerly known as food stamps. In the district, we refer to it as SNAP. And SNAP is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And so HR 1 and the loss of our ABOD waiver requires us to implement SNAP work requirements. And so the key changes, and so most single and working age adults and some parents of older children will now be subjected to work requirements, and which are 80 hours a month or 20 hours per week. And previously, DC did not require these hours. We believe that will impact somewhere between 8,500 and 13,000 SNAP recipients who will be subjected to the new requirements. Due to the budget limitations effective in fiscal year 27, we will implement some TANF changes. And so those changes include that most parents will be subjected to 30 hours of work per week if the youngest child is over 6, 20 hours a week if the child is age 1 through 5. Changes also consist of increased sanctions. Currently, and we'll look at this a little bit later, but for sanctions for failure to meet the requirements and the implementation of benefit reductions for those receiving benefits over 60 months. So DC eliminated TANF time limit previously, but federal funds limited to 5 years. So in the district currently, the federal law limits TANF participation to 5 years. In the district, for those who have been on TANF for more than 5 years, DC funds the benefit for those people. And so we believe that about 10,500 TANF recipients may be impacted um, with the work requirements. And then the benefit step down for those people over 60 months, we believe approximately 7,000 people will be impacted for that. HR 1 also impacted Medicaid, and it required states and the district to impose work requirements for Medicaid. And so in the district, that will become effective in fiscal year 27. And so the work requirements will be similar to SNAP. Again, most single working age adults and some parents of older children will be subjected to an 80-hour a month or 20 hours a week work requirements. Prior to HR 1, there were no work requirements for Medicaid. And then we believe approximately 95,000 people district residents will be impacted by these changes. And so let's talk about SNAP. And in the district, the work requirements will be effective May 1st of this year. So SNAP, again, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, is federally funded that provide food benefits to low-income families. We formerly called it food stamps. SNAP is accepted at most grocery stores, some farmers markets, convenience stores, some online stores, in fact. You cannot use SNAP benefits for prepared foods, vitamins, alcohol, tobacco, and items like soap and toothpaste. Eligibility and benefit amounts are based on the income, your expenses, and the number of people in your household. So there are two types of work requirements for SNAP that will be implemented. First is general work requirements. In essence, general work requirements say that recipients have to register for work, they have to accept suitable employment, and the general work requirements have a number of hours of 30 that they cannot reduce their work hours below that or voluntarily quit a job if they are working. ABOD, and again, the able-bodied adults without dependents. We had a waiver in DC where we did not implement the ABODs, but now because of HR 1, we have to. And so for the ABOD work requirements, they have to work or participate in a qualifying work activity for a minimum of 20 hours a week or 80 hours a month. And then they would can participate in workfare through SNAP ENT. And the number of hours for that depends on their household allotment that will be divided by the DC's minimum wage. So some exemptions from general work requirements. So people under age 16 and people over age 59 will be exempted from the work requirement. If someone is working at least 30 hours a week, they will be exempted. If they're working or earning weekly wages at least equal to the federal minimum wage multiplied by 30 hours, the income equivalent here to this bullet, the third bullet, is $217.50. And so in the district, the minimum wage, I believe, is $17.95. As long as individuals who make at least $217.50 per week will be exempted from general work requirements. People who are participating in TANF work requirements will be exempted. If people have a child under the age of 6, or if they care for an incapacitated person, they will be exempted. Someone who's participating in a substance abuse program receives an exemption. people enrolled at least half-time in school or training program or institute of higher education can be exempt. Someone who's in a federally recognized training program at least half-time can be exempt. Anyone applying for receiving unemployment can be exempt, and someone who's facing physical or mental barriers can be exempt. And so the second type of exemptions apply to ABODs. And so people who are younger than 18 or older than 65 are exempted from the ABOD work requirements. People who's responsible for caring for a child under age 14 can receive an exemption. People who are facing physical and mental barriers can receive an exemption. And anyone who's exempt from the general work requirements can receive an exemption from the ABOT work requirements. Natives or Indians, as it's applied here, can be exempted, and people who are pregnant can receive an exemption from ABOT work requirements. And so the way this looks is someone would apply for SNAP. They will be screened for exemptions. The first screening looks at whether or not they're exempted from the general work requirements. And then if they are not exempted from there, then we would look to see if they're exempted from the ABOT work requirements. And so that's how that will work, but once people apply. Here's a visual of how it works that I just explained. So as we see from left to right, we will screen applicants for exemptions, general work requirements. As we mentioned just a few minutes ago, those are the exemptions. If they don't meet one of those general work requirement exemptions, and then we would screen them for the ABOD exemptions. For those people who are not exempted, they will receive a 6-month certification period. Currently, SNAP recipients receive a 12 months cert period, and our elderly and disabled populations without income, they currently have a 36-month cert period. But people who are not exempted from the ABOT requirement, they will get a 6-month cert period, which means they will have to recertify every 6 months. Are there any questions? I'm not sure if anything's in the chat.
Yeah, there was one question so far,
Mhm.
which was, it was from your beginning slides, actually, regarding the groups, the numbers of people impacted. Is there overlap between the groups of people impacted? So are some people in multiple groups? And if so, do you have a number of DC residents all who are impacted by these changes?
I can get that information for you.
Also, someone asked, I know you're sharing your slides. We always make our slides available by the Wednesday after, and you'll be able to share these slides with us so we can post them on our website.
Yes. So we'll get you all probably not these particular slides, but we will get you all a slide deck to share after the training, after the presentation. Yes.
And also the recording will be on the website. So you will be able to recap these specific slides as well.
Also, we have a number of folks here who have trouble keeping up with some of the acronyms. So if you could, and I know it takes a lot longer, say everything out using all the words. Like I hear ABOT all the time now, and I know for many people who work with this all the time, that's a word, but.
Okay. And so ABOT, able-bodied adults.
Thank you. Each time, sorry.
No problem. ABOD, able-bodied adults without dependents is what that acronym is. Again, SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, that was formerly known as food stamps. You saw earlier in the earlier slide, I mentioned SNAP ENT, and I apologize for not explaining that. SNAP ENT is SNAP Employment and Training. Okay, so again, let's look at who may be impacted by these changes. So we believe that overall, 8,500 to 12,900 SNAP recipients may lose benefits. It assumes 50 to 70% benefit loss among about 17,000 DC SNAP recipients that are ABOS before accounting for exemptions. The data that we're using, about 27% of adults on SNAP, 13% of all SNAP participants will be subject to the ABOT requirements. Fewer than 10% of the ABOTs currently have income. A high DC minimum wage means most individuals who meet the 80-hour-a-month requirement would working or would earn too much to remain SNAP eligible. Single adults working about 34 hours per week at the DC minimum wage, which is about $17.95. And the minimum wage is increasing this summer. Other states report about 20 to 40% of their ABOD, the able-bodied adults without depending, case loss within 3 months. And other research suggests that non-exempt ABODs usually lose SNAP within a year. And so here in DC, we expect higher losses due to more customers without income or
I'm
fewer
sorry,
exemptions.
we
Yes.
did have a question in the chat as well. Can you define able-bodied for us? Does that mean not disabled? So are
So,
there mental,
so
physical, sensory disabilities considered in the same way?
So, not necessarily looking at it in a disability perspective, but able-bodied means that you are of age, you're between the ages of 18 and 64, and that essentially you are working age and you do not have children under the age of 14. So that's essentially how ABOD is defined, not necessarily based on someone's disability, if you will.
But disability gets considered under the
Cor-
exempt.
Correct. Disability can be an exemption from meeting the work requirements. Yes. Mhm. So likely remaining SNAP participants, ABOT exempt, those using volunteer workfare education hours to meet requirements, and those working less than full-time at low wages. So any questions here?
So there's a question in the chat about how this would impact. It says how this impacts people who are in the waiver who are getting SNAP benefits, just so you understand. People in the waiver, at the very least, are on Medicaid and are likely also receiving SSI or SSDI.
So generally speaking, individuals who are disabled, right, they can be determined physically or mentally. The disability can be determined to be a mental or physical barrier to work, and so those people receiving disability insurance, those people can receive a waiver, if that answers your question. I'm sorry, can be exempted from the requirements.
I believe that answered the question, but if it didn't, they'll let us know in the chat.
Okay, thank you. So what we'll do is we'll identify ABODs again, the able-bodied adults without dependents. Those are people between the ages of 18 and 64. At application, when they recertify and when an individual between ages 16 and 64 joins the household is when we would screen to identify the ABOD characteristics. Then we would screen for exemptions. Um, and then we will evaluate participation towards work requirement. Non-exempt ABOS must be screened for meeting work requirements. And then these people can receive 3 months of benefits in a 36-month period if they are not meeting the work requirements. And again, the work requirements for ABOS are 80 hours a month 20 hours a week, average to 80 hours a month. They could work, they can participate in a job program, or they can volunteer, or they can participate in a work fair, which is a volunteer program through the SNAP Employment and Training Division. Any
So someone
questions here?
asked, does this mean that a disabled person has to explicitly apply for an exemption?
So they wouldn't explicitly apply when they apply, right? They submit or respond to some screening questions, and based on those questions, they will provide verification, and then they would receive that exemption based on the documents that they submit. Okay. Now let's look at temporary assistance for needy families, or TANF. And so temporary assistance for needy families was created in 1996 under the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act. The goals of the program was to promote self-sufficiency, reducing dependency, and supporting families. And TANF is funded through a federal block grant. And so there were a 60-month time limit on receiving federal funds for TANF. And those people who've been receiving TANF for more than 5 years, the district pays for those benefits. Work requirements to receive TANF. Oh, and I'm sorry, TANF is a cash benefit. SNAP is a food benefit. TANF is a cash benefit. And so adult recipients have to participate in work activities unless they're exempt. Improved activities include work experience, job training, subsidized or unsubsidized employment, and participants must meet an hourly requirement. And so beginning later on this year in the fall, we will implement changes to stabilize the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program. So there's going to be a step down in benefits for those people who've received TANF for more than 60 months. So in fiscal year 27, the benefit will be reduced 30%. And then in fiscal year 28, it will increase, the reduction will increase to 50%. And then in fiscal year 29, the benefit reduction will increase to 75%. There's also going to be an increase in the current 6% work sanction. So currently, for people who aren't meeting the TANF work requirements, they receive a 6% reduction in their TANF benefit. And so that is going to increase to 25% for those people who aren't exempt. So overall, we believe about 7,000 TANF recipients will be over the 5 years or 60 months and subjected to the step down. A hardship policy has been developed to allow or alleviate the impact for those people, for some people. So based on 2025 data, the total number of households who've been receiving TANF for more than 60 months are approximately 7,838, and this is approximately 51% of the total TANF caseload. Those people, households where they've been receiving TANF cash assistance for more than 60 months, that doesn't include a child-only case, are about 7,000, which is about 40% of the current caseload, 46%. And those people who've been receiving TANF for more than 60 months at child-only cases equal to about 735 households. So the overall projected impact of the sanctions increase, so about 10,500 TANF recipients will likely fail to meet the requirement. And so out of approximately 11,000 work eligible participants, About 5% met the workforce requirement during fiscal year 2025. So incentives to meet work requirements were low when sanctions were only 6%, and the 25% sanction may improve engagement, but only on the margins. For parents who can work, they have a strong incentive to do so rather than remain on TANF, and requirements through the TANF employment program. TEP is the TANF employment program. Engagement. A participant working 30 hours at DC's minimum wage would earn approximately $2,300 a month, far higher average than the TANF benefit of $699. The high DC minimum wage means most individuals who meet the requirement would earn more than enough to remain eligible for TANF, because TANF is also eligibility is also an income driven, as well as based on the number of people in your household. And in order to receive TANF, you must also have a child in your household. So likely remaining TANF participants, most TANF recipients subject to work requirements are likely to retain benefits, but payments are likely to decrease due to sanctions, or work participation is expected to increase at least a little. Any questions so far? No. So non-exempt TANF customers must participate in work activities through their assigned vendors, and the district assigns them to vendors to engage in work activities. And so children under one, a single parent household with a child under one is exempt from the work requirements. A two-parent household without funded childcare must work 30 hours a week. Two-parent households with funded childcare must work 30 hours a week. So for those people with a household with a child between the ages of 1 and 6, a single parent must work 20 hours a week, a two-parent household 35 hours a week, and those individuals with funded childcare those households, must work a total of 55 hours a week. For those people with a child over 6, a single parent must work 30 hours a week. A two-parent households without childcare funded must work 35 hours a week. And if a two-parent household has funded childcare, that household would have to work 55 hours a week. Some approved work activities are job search, job readiness, unsubsidized employment, work experience, community service, on-the-job training, vocational, educational training, childcare services, job skills training, education directly related to employment, or subsidized employments are all approved activities to meet the TANF work requirement. So in order to be exempt from the TANF work requirements, a minor who is not a head of household, a minor under 18, a single custodial parent or caretaker who provides for the care of a child under 6, a parent with a child under 12 months, someone who's 60 years of age or older can be exempt, a parent caretaker in a two-parent household who's not the primary wage earner can be exempt, a person who is ill, injured, or incapacitated, a woman who is in her second or third trimester or within 4 months of the delivery is exempt. So how can you help? So we encourage you to share information as widely as possible. Refer people to our website, dhs.dc.gov. Assist those who may need help when applying for benefits, and update your guidelines on eligibility with the latest information provided. Again, we will encourage you to direct people to our website. The website can provide people with links to apply for benefits, and wholeheartedly encourage as many people as possible to apply for benefits, because there are different ways that people can get eligibility. There are several types of income deductions and disregards that might help them to gain eligibility. So encourage people to apply, even if they feel that they aren't eligible. And so these are, again, resources. So the DHS website, the call center is 202-727-5355. They can call to get information. And then they can apply for benefits on District Direct online or the District Direct mobile app, which can be found in the App Store or the Play Store.
So there were two questions that I didn't get to.
Okay.
One was related to when you were talking about how people provide the evidence regarding exemption. Someone was asking, is that done the same way for redeterminations?
Correct. So generally the process is, so redeterminations or recertifications or renewals, customers will get a notice, and in that notice, they will get the additional forms that they need to complete. But if they don't complete the forms, they can call the call center at the number here, and then they can complete the form by talking to a representative. So there's a work requirement, a proof of work activity form, and then there's a medical report form that they will complete if they have physical or mental barriers to employment.
And then someone was asking regarding the TANF exemptions, how would this impact parents or family members who are the primary caregiver for an adult with a disability?
So for TANF, right? So for someone that is not an exemption in and of itself for TANF. The caring for an adult disabled or incapacitated person applies to the SNAP work exemptions, but not necessarily TANF. But for TANF, there also has to be a child in the household in order to be considered for eligibility.
So for example, though, if a person had 3 children, one of them has a significant disability, turns 18, the parent has to care for them, and that impacts their ability to work. How does that impact their TANF work requirement?
So there's no exemption, if you will, for someone who's caring for someone else, essentially an adult, right? But however, so for those TANF applicants, they will need to complete an assessment. And so when they complete an assessment, and then when they engage with the vendor, then that may be considered, and they could work out ways to where that may exempt them from the TANF work requirements.
I think that's the last of the questions. Thank you. This was really thorough. As we said, these slides will be on our website, or not these specific slides, but the slides about SNAP and TANF will be on our website. And as always, the recording will be on our website by next Wednesday.
Okay. And we'll provide another slide for you to put on your website.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
So next up, we have a representative from the DC Board of Elections. Ms. Kabede. Welcome, Ms. Kabede. I don't know if we're sharing slides for you or if you're doing that, but I will now turn it over to you to talk about voting in DC.
Thank you, Director Reese, and thank you all for having me here to talk about ranked choice voting today. I will be sharing my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
It is not in presentation mode, but we can see your screen.
Yes, I think my computer is lagging, but I'm putting it on presentation mode. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. As Director Reese mentioned, my name is Yoinhara Kabeda, and I'm a public affairs specialist at the DC Board of Elections. And today I'll be talking a bit about ranked choice voting, what it is, why we got to implementing it here in DC, and exactly what it will look like here in the districts. So first and foremost, ranked choice voting will begin implementing in DC, starting with the June 16 primary elections. And that is because district voters voted on it during the November 2024 election as part of Initiative 83, which part of that initiative was for the implementation of ranked choice voting here in the district. And 73% of DC voters voted to approve this initiative. Then the DC Council funded to approve ranked choice voting, starting with the primary election coming up. And then we at the Board of Elections are tasked with the implementation of ranked choice voting as it's listed in the legislation by the proponents of Initiative 83. So everything that's written in the legislation is not by the board, but actually by the proponents and those that actually petitioned for the initiative to appear on the ballot. And so these are the contests that ranked choice voting will apply for. So as you can see, contests starting with the president and vice president of the United States, all the way down to our advisory neighborhood commissioner contests. So long as there are 3 or more candidates running per contest, residents and voters are able to rank their preferences of candidates in each contest. So ranked choice voting exactly. It's different in various jurisdictions. So multiple other states and cities have also implemented it. DC is not the first to do so. But in DC, it will look a bit different than compared to other places such as New York, Alaska, or Maine. And that's based on the guidance in the Initiative 83 legislation that passed. So the main things to keep in mind are so long as there are 3 or more candidates within a contest, that contest will be subject to ranked choice voting. The only exception to offices that will not be subject to ranked choice voting at all are those that are the state or local party offices, such as like the Democratic committee woman and vice versa. And the idea is that candidates will rank their preference of candidates in the order in which they prefer them. And they have the option, or voters, excuse me, will have the option to rank up to 5 candidates. And that's to ensure that the selected candidate receives 50% plus 1 of the votes or majority in order to be declared a winner. And this right here is, bear with me. So again, if in the first round of voting, which is like the first round of everyone's first choice candidate, there isn't a candidate that receives that 50% plus 1 threshold, we will go into subsequent rounds of voting in which the candidate with the least number of votes is eliminated, and then their votes will get transferred to their voters' next choice candidate until we reach a candidate that has received that majority of votes in order to be declared a winner. And again, you do only have 1 vote at a time per contest. And so ranking does not mean that you have multiple votes. But what it does is if your first choice candidate were to get eliminated because they received the fewest number of votes, that vote will now get transferred to the candidate that you ranked next. and so on and so forth until a candidate reaches that 50% plus one majority. We do also want to note that voters do not have to rank candidates, but we do recommend that you do in order to exercise your full voting right and power. And in the instance that a candidate were to get eliminated, your vote will now get transferred to your next choice or next preferred candidate. And so this is an example of what a ballot or a contest on a ballot would look like. And I'm going to talk a bit about how to accurately mark your ballot to ensure that every single vote is counted. The main and most important thing is that you fill in only one oval per column and per row. As you can see, you have 5 different columns for the 5 different rankings. And then at the bottom, you have the different candidates that are running for this position. You can rank up to 5. You do not have to rank all 5. And ranking, your favorite candidate does not harm their chances of winning if you're to rank, your second, third, fourth, or fifth options at all. The only instance in which your rankings will actually take into effect, as stated earlier, is if your first choice candidate were to get eliminated, your votes will get transferred. And so this visual just shows how to accurately complete your ballot. This voter has ensured that they've only selected one candidate per ranking, and they do not give the same ranking to multiple candidates. So this is how you accurately complete your ballot. And now I'm going to talk a bit about some mistakes to avoid that could invalidate some of your votes. So the first one being giving multiple rankings to the same candidate. This does not help the candidate in any way because, as mentioned, you only have one vote. And so if this voter's first choice candidate, in this case, who is Donald Duck, were to get eliminated because they only voted for Donald Duck, their vote will stay with Donald Duck, and once he's eliminated, their vote will not get transferred to another preferred or selected candidate because they've only selected Donald Duck. And so their second and their third choice options in this case will be invalid. And so the red highlights or denotes that that specific candidate or that specific ranking will not be counted, meaning making the contest invalid after the point of the first choice ranking in this case because they've selected the same candidate. And the next mistake is giving multiple candidates the same ranking. So in this example, the voter selected Donald Duck and Chuck Brown as their second choice candidate. Because we cannot tell voter intent, this automatically will invalidate that second choice. And so this voter's first choice will go towards Beyonce as they've clearly selected Beyonce. But if Beyonce were to get eliminated and we were to go into a second round of tabulation, this contest will be invalid because they've selected more than one candidate for that second choice ranking. And you can only select one candidate at a time. And so, beginning with the second choice candidate and their third, that contest will be deemed invalid. So their vote will stay with Beyonce. And the next mistake is just a mistake. It does not invalidate the entire contest, but we do want to caution voters just to keep in mind, and that's skipping one ranking. So in this case, the voter selected their first choice candidate, skipped their second choice, and then ranked their third and fourth choice preference. And so what will happen is if Beyonce, their first choice, were to get eliminated, the voters' vote will get transferred to Donald Duck, even though that's their third selected choice, but that is their next choice, next selected candidate. And if Donald Duck were to get eliminated, then their vote will get transferred to Chuck Brown, which is their next selected candidate. And that's because the legislation actually allows for one skip. And so in this case, their votes will get transferred. Like their third choice will get transferred to their second, and their fourth choice will get transferred to their third in the sense of when calculating or doing the rounds of tabulation. Now, when it becomes an issue and it invalidates a contest, is when you skip two consecutive rankings or two in a row. The legislation does not allow for two skips. And so in this case, the voter happened to skip the first two rankings. So because these are the first two, um, the voter will not have any votes counted for this contest because it happened to be the first two, meaning their third choice candidate or Chuck Brown will not be counted. And so therefore this entire contest is invalid. But if the voter were to select Chuck Brown as their first choice and they skipped their second and third choice and then ranked their fourth choice, what will happen is their vote will go to Chuck Brown as their first choice. And once Chuck Brown is eliminated, or if Chuck Brown were to be eliminated, that their vote will stay with Chuck Brown, and then the rest of the contest will be deemed invalid because they've skipped two in a row, like their second and their third choice ranking. And so everything at that point will be exempt. So now we're going to talk about tabulation, and these are the rounds in which we do to declare a winner. So these are the first round of choices in which every voter's first choice candidate is counted. In this example, we have candidates A through D, where the circles represent votes for them. So in this case, there isn't a candidate that has reached or surpassed that 50% threshold. And so there isn't a candidate that has cleared majority. So we'll go into a second round of tabulation, in which the um, candidate with the fewest number of votes, in this case it's candidate C, will receive the fewest number of votes, will get eliminated, and their votes will now get transferred to the remaining candidates. So that's what will happen in round two. And in round two, there still isn't a candidate that has cleared that 50% majority. And so candidate D, being the candidate that's received the fewest number of votes, will now get eliminated. And candidate D's votes will get transferred to the remaining votes, the remaining candidates, based on voters' next choice candidate. So in round three, once candidates C and D are eliminated and their votes have been transferred to voters' next choice candidates, candidate B actually ends up surpassing that majority, that 50% threshold, reaching majority of the votes for this contest, meaning candidate B will be declared the winner in this case. If we were to do the regular old voting system prior to ranked choice voting, we of course wouldn't have rounds of tabulation. We just have one vote in which residents or voters would select their top choice. And in that case, candidate A would have been declared the winner at the top because they received the most amount of votes. But with ranked choice voting, it's all about the candidate that receives the majority of votes and not the person that receives the most amount of votes. So as you can see, just because a candidate received the highest number of votes in round one doesn't necessarily mean that they will be declared winner in future rounds of tabulation. It all depends on how voters rank their preferences of candidates as well. So now that we've talked a bit about ranked choice voting, what it will look like here in the district, and how we will get to results in declaring candidates, we do want to level set some expectations in terms of what voting will actually look like come June during the primaries. So we do want to caution that voting will be taking a bit longer. This is a new voting system, as well as there being a lot of contests on the ballot and just a lot of candidates running. We do want to caution the public to just be prepared to spend a little bit more time, at the polls or even completing your mail-in ballot, and just ensure that you're aware of that and, to ensure that that doesn't deter anybody from voting. Just be as patient as possible and understand and recognize that this is everyone's first time here in the district voting this way, and recognizing that and just being patient, regardless of whether you choose to vote on the machines or if you choose to vote on paper. The ballot is a bit longer just because of the number of offices that will appear on the ballot. But that's not to say that district voters shouldn't go in feeling prepared because there will be adequate guidance on ranked choice voting available both at our vote centers as well as on our mailed ballots as well. Every registered voter in the district does receive a mail ballot, regardless of whether or not that voter decides to use it or not, is up to their discretion. But voters also have the opportunity and the ability to bring their mail ballots into a vote center and also ask for assistance in completing it there. Also have the opportunity to drop in and drop off any mail-in ballots at vote centers. There are collections at vote centers as well as our multiple drop box locations across the city and the USPS as well. So there will be adequate guidance in person at our vote centers. We'll have site coordinators who have been specifically trained on ranked choice voting that can also answer questions on ranked choice voting and just how to complete your ballot. So there are multiple touch points to receive assistance, whether you decide to vote in person or you vote by mail and come into a vote center to ensure that um, you're feeling confident and have completed your ballot to your liking. And there will also be RCV mailers that have started being sent out, and we'll have two more in the streamline prior to the June primary election. So those are just some FYIs and expectations in regards to ranked choice voting. Now I'll talk a bit about what results will look like once the election has actually passed. So similar to other election years, preliminary results will still be released and posted on election night on our website, as it's always been the case. Um, the results in terms of tabulation and when we'll do the tabulation, we are still deciding because DC does have up to 10 days after Election Day to receive mail-in ballots, so long as they are postmarked by Election Day. Um, so we might do tabulation at the end, wait that 10-day period once we've received all the ballots, then begin to tabulate, or we might tabulate as we go along as we reach that 10-day deadline. But once a decision has been made on that end and front, we will definitely inform the public. But regardless of which route we choose to take for tabulation, the DC residents will be aware of the results of each of the rounds. We want to ensure that the entire process, we're as transparent as possible throughout the entire process, regardless of if we do the tabulation after that 10-day period or during that 10-day period or leading up to that 10-day period. So know that those results will also be available and posted as they come out prior to declaring a winner for each contest as well. And you might be wondering what the board is doing to ensure that DC voters are educated enough about ranked choice voting ahead of the primary elections. So we're doing a variety of presentations such as this, both virtually and in person. Our in-person engagements, we also bring out voting equipment as well as mail-in ballots for those that request it. We do have a webpage dedicated to ranked choice voting on our website, which you can find at dcboe.org/RCV. And that site has some frequently asked questions about ranked choice voting. Everything that's covered in this presentation is also featured on that website. We also have a live election ranked choice voting simulator tool in which you can vote for your favorite ice cream flavor and actually see the tabulation being done and the transfer of votes between ice cream flavors based on people who have checked out our webpage and actually vote for their ice cream flavors. We also do have a resource lab in person at our office, which is located at 1015 Half Street Southeast. So this is just a place in which it's open to anyone in the public. They can come in and a member of our staff will actually show them how to use the voting equipment with this new voting system. We have our voting machines. We also have paper ballots, as mentioned. We'll have the ranked choice voting FAQs printed out, as well as some of the palm cards that you all should have started receiving in the mail by now, to ensure that there's multiple touch points for residents between now and June to ensure that election day or during early voting is not the first time that they're hearing about ranked choice voting. And as mentioned, we're doing a lot of presentations and speaking engagements in person and virtually as well. We do have an RCV explanation video coming out, as well as a voter guide and two more mailers about ranked choice voting between now and June so that the public is more aware of it as we lead into the election season. And we have an email dedicated solely to ranked choice voting. So if there are any questions at the end of this presentation or anyone else would like more information on ranked choice voting, you can email rcv@dcboe.org. And if you'd also like a presentation, whether that be in person or virtual, for your community or for any specific group in the city, we are accepting outreach and speaking engagement requests. You can send those to our outreach email, which is just outreach@dcboe.org. So please feel free to utilize any of these resources or the ones mentioned earlier in the presentation to get more information or get any clarification beyond just today's meeting as well. So that marks the end of my presentation. I'll now take some questions as well.
I've not seen any questions in the chat so far. One person did comment on how complicated it appeared, although they were commenting when you were talking about counting the votes, not at the point in time when you were talking about how to vote. So at least the complicated part's on your end.
Here, I can go back to that in the sense too while we wait for others in case they have questions. So the reason that we're asking residents to rank or, based on the legislation, is to ensure that a candidate that receives majority of the votes, which is more than half of the votes, is declared winner. And so we go into rounds of tabulation only if the number of candidates like that receive a voter's first choice selection, there's no one that has reached that majority or that 50% plus one threshold, because then they will not have majority of the votes. And so in order to reach that majority, we have to eliminate a candidate in each round. And the candidate that ends up being eliminated in each round is, of course, the candidate that receives the fewest number of votes. So in, round one, it's candidate C, and then their votes get distributed. It just so happens that the candidates or the voters that voted for a candidate C, their next choice candidate, it seems like one voted for A, one voted for B, one voted for D. That's purely coincidental. It has nothing to do with like symmetry or like one vote goes to each candidate. And even in round two, there's no majority reached yet. So we have to eliminate one more candidate. Candidate D receiving the fewest number of votes or having fewer circles gets eliminated. And then now everyone that voted for candidate D here, their votes are now transferred to the voter's next choice candidate. So when that happens, it's clear that most of the people that voted for candidate D next voted for candidate B as their next preference candidate. So when that happens, B has passed that 50% threshold, and because that's what's needed to reach majority, B would be declared the winner in that fashion.
So one person did comment, how are seniors and people with disabilities supposed to understand this new system? I would just remind that person, and maybe you could talk about, there will be people available in every voting location to help walk someone through how you make choices and how you can rank people first through fifth, correct?
Yes, correct. And in addition to that, we are going into nursing homes as well as senior residences and doing similar presentations like this, where we bring in voting equipment as well as sample paper ballots to ensure that, these seniors also have touch points with ranked choice voting prior to election day. Also, our voting machines are accessible. We have a headphone jack for those that would prefer to hear the audio to ensure that they're making the accurate selections. We also do have a tactile touchpad that you can use to make your selections and navigate the vote machine instead of just directly using and touching the screen. We also have that push to that puff and pipe, the puff option as well for those that want to use that to make their selection. And we have audio in both Spanish and English, as well as our equipment and our ballots are both translated in English and Spanish. You have the opportunity to change the font and the brightness of the vote machines as well. So our vote machines are very accessible and friendly to every district voter, regardless of their um, abilities.
Someone asked who okayed the new system. I believe you said at the beginning it was a referendum and the voters of DC okayed the new system,
Yes,
right?
exactly. So it was and an initiative, actually, any district resident can propose for initiative to appear on the ballot. What happens is districts, you write up a summary of it and have a title and propose legislation, and you have to receive enough signatures in order to appear on the ballot. And once those signatures go through the contest in the challenge period, and you still have the adequate number of signatures from residents of all wards and not, just specifically concentrated in a specific area, then that issue will actually appear in the next election as an initiative. So this, was an initiative in the 2024 election. So at this point, a year and some change ago, it was the question or the contest on the back of the paper ballots. And 73% of voters at the time voted yes on Initiative 83. So that's based on the feedback of DC voters.
Someone mentioned the ice cream simulation is very helpful. They went and did it already, I expect. I also went and did it, and I agree.
Yes, and it's always nice. Who doesn't love ice cream? And I love that, the simulation actually shows the transfer of votes. So that definitely helps a lot of people that are visual learners like myself more than just the visuals on this slide in terms of the tabulation, because it doesn't have that animation and that physical transfer of votes. But you're able to see that, in the first round, vanilla ice cream might have the most votes, but by the end, it might be cookies and cream that's selected as winner. So
And someone put the link here so that other people can go in and do that if they wish.
that's perfect. Thank you. And then I'll also include our email for our CV outreach as well as our email for accepting outreach requests between now and the primaries.
Great.
And I think there's a question, yes. So someone says, can this be changed if voters are not satisfied with this new system? Correct. And so what voters would have to do is submit another initiative that, undoes ranked choice voting here in the district. And you'd pick up a petition, get the required number of signatures, and then once it's past that challenge period and still has the accurate number of signatures needed from residents across the wards, that will appear on the ballot and give voters a chance to vote on it again. And if it receives overwhelming support like it did, in 2024, then ranked choice voting will then be eliminated so long as the council approves and funds all of that.
Well, thank you very much. This has been real helpful. And as you said, there are lots of opportunities for people to get additional education so that everyone votes and votes in an educated manner. So that was all that we had for today. So as I said, we will be sending something out. Our next forum will occur very soon on April 6th, and it'll be a budget forum. We'll be talking about the DDS fiscal year 2027 budget at that time. Have a great weekend, everyone.